Oh.
Niyaz, you can start now.
Okay, sir. Respectable dignitaries, my teachers, and my all respectable persons that have been, we have been gathered together on the international webinar on 14th Bacamh Annual Conference. This year's theme is Child and Adolescent Mental Health in a Changing World. And our media partner is Moner Khabor TV. And yesterday we had our 14th Annual Scientific Conference, and today we had our 2 workshops and our annual general meeting. And international webinar is a part of this 14th Bacamh Annual Scientific Conference. And thanks for the Moner Khabor TV and the sponsor partner also. Our session, the paper will be presented by Professor Shekho Sheshadri. He is a senior professor of Department of Child and Psychiatry of NIMHANS, India, and Dr. Murad Bok, consultant and child and adolescent psychiatrist, Brampton Civic Hospital, Brampton, Ontario, Canada, and assistant clinical professor of McMaster University, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. But first, I would request our president of Bangladesh Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, Professor Nahid Mahzabin Morshed, for introductory speech. The chairperson of this session is Professor Nahid Mahzabin Morshed.
Thank you, Dr. Niyaz Muhammad Khan. Good evening, everybody. Today is our international webinar of 14th annual conference of Bacamh, which is the Bangladesh Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Today is the webinar session due to COVID situations. It's a special situation. We gathered together in a platform of Moner Khabor, and thanks to Moner Khabor for arranging this international webinar on behalf of us. Thank you. And I would like to thank you all, and I want to show my gratitude towards you. The renowned psychiatrists are gathered in a same platform, and of course our audience, they are not our panelists, but they are observing us. And I think here we gathered a list of psychiatrists who are not able to come in Dhaka to attend our non-virtual conference due to some limitations. So our mission is like, we want to include everybody throughout the Bangladesh, and they are also our part of Bacamh, and that's why we are arranging this international webinar. I am like to give thank you to Professor Dr. MSI Mollik sir, who is the founder chairman, founder president of Bacamh, and actually his dream comes true, and his followers and his students are just he's showing us the path, and we just walk And of course, I would like to give thanks to Professor Farooq Alam, the immediate past president of Bacamh. I would like to give thanks to the M.A. Salam, Professor M.A. Salam, Professor M.H. Mustafizur Rahman sir, Professor Dr. Syed Mahfuzul Haq sir, Professor Shalom sir, Professor M. Mamun Hussain, and Professor Abu Tahir, Dr. R.K.S. Royal from Sylhet, and also I want to give thanks to MMS Professor MMS Salauddin Kausar Biplab. Special thanks to him because Moner Khabor is run by him and it's his dream project. Thank you, everyone, and I especially give to thanks Professor Dr. Shekhar Shikadri, Professor and Head of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, India. And he will give a speech for us. And I would like to my heartiest thanks to the Dr. Mohammed Murad Bak, Consultant Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Brampton Clinic Hospital, Brampton, Ontario, Canada. Thank you all for your presence, and your presence will glorify our conference. Thank you all, and I hope you will be like this with us in a same platform to contribute in the field of child and adolescent psychiatry on behalf of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam. So our today's honorable panel of experts who are our teacher, mentor, and also the light pathway of our psychiatry in Bangladesh, Professor Syed Mahfuzul Haq sir, Professor Shalom sir, we don't have Professor Salam sir. Okay, Professor Mustafizur Rahman sir will join soon, and Professor Farooq Alam sir has recently joined. Professor Mollik sir, Professor Abu Tahir sir, Professor MMS Salauddin Kausar Biplab sir, and Dr. Ramendra Kumar Singh Royal. And at last, we'll have thank giving by the Dr. Helaluddin Ahmed and also the Dr. Sifati Said.
Just I want to contribute one thing, and our upcoming chairman, the president-elect, is Dr. Helaluddin Ahmed, also in here for us, and Sifati Said, the assistant professor, Department of Psychiatry, and she is the treasurer of Bacamh now. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, madam. Professor P. Shekhar Sheshadri is a child and adolescent psychiatrist and professor of the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in the NIMHANS, Bangalore, India. He is widely quoted for decades, have been associated with numerous mental health initiatives. He has authored a lot of books, and a lot of papers has been written by him, and he is known for his research work in life skill training, child sexual abuse, masculinities, women mental health issues, and sexual minorities. I request Professor Shekhar Sheshadri sir to give his theme paper presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be part of the 14th annual conference of the Bangladesh Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health, and also the privilege of sharing a platform with Dr. Murad Bakht. I had the honor actually of delivering the oration in last year in memory of one of the stalwarts of Bangladesh psychiatry. And it's my honor, my friends, to be part of the deliberations today. You have chosen a very, very relevant theme, child and adolescent mental health in changing times. And when we speak of changing times, there's one thing that comes to mind, and that is COVID. And in what ways COVID has made a difference to children's lives. And I want to use the framework of COVID, but go beyond that, because the matter is not just one of the challenges that COVID has brought upon us, but it was the changing scenario in children's lives even in pre-COVID eras, some of which has accentuated because of the pandemic. The reason I'm stating this, friends, is because pandemics of the nature of COVID have a disproportionate impact on the more vulnerable populations. Children from vulnerable backgrounds, daily wage workers, migrant workers, children with families in which there's the theme of domestic violence, mental illness in parents, and so on. Keeping this in mind, I would like to basically start my theme paper presentation. And the first thing that I want to state is that let's take a glance at these four major issues that I've put here. Now, vulnerable children and adolescent populations are high in low-income countries, and they are in high need of mental health care. Now, this need had increased even before the pandemic for a lot of reasons, whether this was urbanization or whether it was digitalization. Now, the digital world has become that much more in COVID, but the digital world had started even before COVID, and the whole issue of internet gaming disorder and digital addictions and the whole rubric of behavioral addictions had started even before. So LMIC is one issue. The second is the MH gap. What is the kind of access to prevention and treatment resources? And we all know that in LMIC countries, this is relatively low. The truth also, my friends, is for every child who manages to reach a tertiary care center, whether it is the National Institute of Mental Health in Dhaka or whether it is the Bangabandhu Institute, there will be 99 other children who will never manage to reach you, but they are there suffering. The third issue is the issue of adverse childhood experiences, or called ACEs, comprising of deprivation and discrimination, of abuse and neglect, of trauma, loss, and grief. Now, if you look at the first wave in the pandemic, the concern was about old age, comorbidity, diabetes, hypertension, pre-existing heart and lung problems. But in the second wave, particularly in India, younger people, even those who were vaccinated, were dying. 45-year-olds, 50 years old. And we had the whole theme of children losing one, and in some unfortunate cases, even both parents, and the whole narrative, therefore, of the COVID orphans. The framework in all this, of course, is the whole COVID issue, which is the disruption of normal developmental processes and the greater risk of childhood mental disorders. And I want to draw to the attention of the august members of Bacamh a very, very critical issue. A 1-month-old child or a 3-month-old child, even before COVID, would more or less been at home.
Professor Mustafiz sir, will you please mute your microphone?
Thank you very much, Professor Mustafiz. The 15, 17-year-olds find their own way of, through the mobile communication. My concern, friends, is about the preschoolers, the 4, 5, 6 years. What is going to happen to their developmental trajectories 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Here is the opportunity for robust longitudinal research for those who believe in developmental psychology and the whole evolutionary processes in human development of what the COVID has done. So this is an issue that we need to keep in mind. Building on this, even before COVID in 2011, the Lancet Global Mental Health Series highlighted the need to identify and assess high-risk and vulnerable children with subclinical symptoms using selected and indicated interventions. Please mark the word subclinical. Dramatic, severe mental health disorders fitting ICD-10 DSM-5 criteria is one issue. But the subclinical symptoms which are not often recognized, And the changing scenario, therefore, makes it an imperative, particularly during COVID and our emerging from COVID into the post-COVID world, whenever that will occur. And we have no predictability. Is it going to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now? When will the entire population be vaccinated? COVID then be reduced to the same vexation as a common cold? We don't know. And what happens, therefore, to subclinical symptoms, particularly as schools are opening now in India, and presumably in Bangladesh also, these decisions would be taken about opening out of social spaces in schools. What are the red flags then? And this is the importance, therefore, to understand the child mental health does not lie only in clinics and textbooks of psychiatry, but within homes and families, in streets, in residential care institutions, in schools, in courtrooms. So the landscape of the practice of child mental health extends far beyond the clinic to these spaces. And in the changing scenario, particularly where safety concerns, COVID, post-COVID are related, and other safety and protection issues, that we look at-risk adolescents and children. So look at categories: orphaned abandoned children, street and working children, HIV infected and affected, children and adolescents with difficulty, children and adolescents affected by gender and sexuality vulnerabilities, adolescents in conflict with the law. So categories, contexts of vulnerability, children in institutions who reside in childcare agencies and they avail of care and protection, non-institutionalized children who live in families, in communities, but they are exposed to multiple psychosocial risks. It could be abuse, it could be substance abuse in the family, parental conflict, and perhaps the unfortunate theme of domestic violence. Now, these kids may have social networks, but they are often severely compromised, placing them sometimes at much higher risk of abuse and exploitation than institutionalized children, and they end up in institutions. Look at the experiences that children have and what kind of changes are happening as urbanization, liberalization, globalization, COVID-related challenges, single-parent families, rejection and abandonment, parental conflict, loss experiences, mental illness in families, abuse, child labor and trafficking, children in conflict with the law, political violence, illness and disability. You know, for example, for those deeply interested in public child mental health, if you look at the scenario in Bangladesh with the Rohingya refugees, and those of us who want to assist children who are born in the refugee camps, and what happens to their development, and do we, as you know, as part of our cross-border and our humanitarian imperatives, provide this kind of assistance, and of course, children with illness and then what are the emotional behavioral consequences? So my point is, there are categories, there are contexts, and there are experiences. And all this gives rise to emotional and behavioral consequences, internalizing on the one hand the anxiety, depression, adjustment spectrum, and trauma-related issues. Remember, I spoke about adverse childhood experiences. Then there are externalizing disorders, runaway behavior, self-harm, anger and aggression, substance abuse, attention deficit and hyperactivity, a whole gamut of life skills issues, particularly around gender, sex, and sexuality, with adolescents increasingly experiencing and experimenting, much to the consternation and predicament of their families, and particularly in traditional cultures. How are families and social structures wrapping their heads around the changing scenario of adolescent lifestyle and adolescent decision making, and the kind of life skills deficits and experiences that play out in schools, experiences of bullying, either as perpetration or as a victim? And then, of course, there are developmental disabilities, not necessarily as a consequence. If you look at emotional disabilities or learning disabilities, the risk of school dropout, the risk therefore, of getting into deviant peer groups and then coming into conflict with the law, or children with disability and learning problems who have identity issues and low self-esteem, and therefore gravitating towards high-risk behaviors such as substance use or high-risk sexual behaviors. These are changed scenarios in the challenges of child and adolescent mental health that needs to become the imperative of our practice. So to put it in context, an understanding of children's emotional and behavior problems needs to look at the child's experiences, happy, difficult, traumatic. In what context do these experiences take place? Is it at home? Is it at school? Is it in the family? Is it in public spaces? What impact do these experiences have on the child's emotions and behaviors? And it is this triangulation that really forms the basis of understanding the child and the basis of a therapist or a mental health professional's response and intervention. This brings me to a very critical point in child mental health in a changing world that I want to bring to your attention. The concept is of transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinarity, friends, embraces complex systems analysis. What it does is that it integrates child mental health with children's contextual needs and concerns. The issue of content dialogue with multiple stakeholders, such as protection functionaries, law enforcement, the police, the judiciary, schools, childcare institution staff, policy makers in women and child and protection systems in the government. What transdisciplinarity does is that it enables child and adolescent mental health professionals to understand children's contextual realities of family, school, institution, and law, whose cultures, functioning, and responses play a pivotal role in determining child and adolescent mental health. How does this work in practice? Let me take you through an initiative that we have started recently called Support, Advocacy, and Mental Health Interventions for Vulnerable Children in Distress. What we do in Samvad, which is a national initiative and an integrated resource for child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care. And this is the change scenario that I want to present to you. The reality is that protection systems do not understand the nuances of mental health, and the mental health system does not understand the complexity of child protection, legal, judicial, and police systems. So what we are doing is that with support from the Ministry of Women and Child Development Government of India, and located in the department where I work in, we enhance child and adolescent psychosocial well-being through the promotion of transdisciplinary and integrated approaches to mental health and protection to all states. So it's a multidisciplinary team of professionals trained to provide capacity building programs. Now, how do we do this? We work in four key verticals. We work in care and protection. Now, this means a safe, healthy, and child-friendly environment for children everywhere with measures for protection of and redressal for abuse and exploitation. So this system would include the police, the judiciary, legal services authorities, childcare institutions, helplines that look at immediate response. So these are child protection systems. Then there is the education vertical. We speak about safe and inclusive schools, educational spaces where teachers and school counselors are sensitized to identify red flags, identify, and provide first-level responses to children with emotional behavior and learning difficulties. And recognize those who are severe and find mental health systems where they can access quality mental health and psychosocial care for every child at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels for both preventive and curative purposes. So this is at your primary health levels. This would be at your district levels. These would be at centers like NIMH, at Bongobondu, and other teaching medical college departments of psychiatry. Those are tertiary centers. And this is your district level, and these are your primary levels. And we have material in Sambad on all these issues. The fourth vertical is on policy and law. And it's for the first time in the history of NIMHANS, the mainstream hospital, that we actually have a vertical on policy and law, where we are integrating child mental health concerns into legal and judicial practices to enable child-friendly and child-centric legislation and judicial processes in contexts such as child sexual abuse, juvenile justice, and child custody. The reason I'm stating this, friend, is it is surprising and thought-provoking when we use the term a changing world. The truth is, COVID is a current pandemic. Adverse childhood experiences, child abuse has been an everlasting epidemic. And child protection as an agenda will never end. So COVID has only increased our need for our intensive engagement with this kind of transdisciplinary approach in the practice of child mental health, where we work with other duty bearers and service providers in an active fashion. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I'm also taking the liberty for at least those of you who are on the Zoom panel to share with you some of the resources that Samvad, this is our repository where all these materials, resources, assessment proformas, reports, videos, everything is available for you to directly use. We do not believe in copyright. We believe in copyleft. Please use it, send it to anyone, adapt it. There is no point in developing material and saying copyright and holding on to it. It serves no purpose. And there is a certain generosity, which I know Bacamh is famous for in sharing with service providers all over Bangladesh as a country. I've also put our YouTube and resource, which has more than 170 videos, which again, you can use and adapt to actually look at how child mental health can now address the entire country of Bangladesh and all your districts, Dhaka, Chittagong, Rajshahi, all these districts, so that the philosophy, the practice, the ideology, and the skills of child mental health pervades into the fabric of your country. Thank you very much for this honor, and wishing you all good health, and I'd be delighted to stay on to the program and address questions. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, Professor Shekhar Sheshadri, sir. We have a question and answer session at last, I think. We have. And our honorable panel of experts will say about your presentation, but I have noted something that will help us. I'll now request Dr. Murad Bakht, Consultant Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist, Brampton Civic Hospital, Brampton, Ontario, Canada. And he is also the Assistant Clinical Professor of McMaster University, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And he's by born, he's a Bangladeshi, and he's a friend of Bangladesh psychiatry and child and adolescent psychiatry. And he has proven himself in different arenas, in different international conferences, in different books and journals and articles. Now I request Professor Dr. Murad Bakht sir to say something about our this year's theme, the child and adolescent mental health in a changing world.
Thank you, Dr. Niaz. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I can hear
Yes,
you.
Dr. Murad, very clearly,
Thank
Dr.
you
Murad.
so much. I want to thank you, all of you, those who are present here, all my colleagues and friends, including Professor Salahuddin Biplab, Dr. Murshid, Dr. Malik, Dr. Niaz, Dr. Halal, Dr. Royal, Dr. Professor Shashadri, and all of you, those who are involved in this child adolescent psychiatric mental health agency program. As Professor Mullik was very kind to give some introduction about me, I've been involved for many, many years with Bacamh. I've been coming every year. Unfortunately, this because of the COVID, it is not possible this year. And this is, I forgot, I didn't forget, she's always in my mind, Dr. Shifat. And there is mental all over the years. Thank you. They organized this presentation. And Dr. Niaz is now taking over as well. I think he is the first graduate from the child program here. So, and I also give a thanks to Moner Khabor, this online TV program. Thank you. I'd like to thank you again for inviting me from far distance. That you, I think that you are, you don't, you kept my name, and you have been very kind to invite me as a speaker or a panelist. But I thought that maybe I should say a few words. Nowadays, I am, not talking much or writing some much because of the COVID-19. The situation is quite dire. None of the country has been spared. Canada has been badly affected as well. Now we are starting the fourth wave of COVID. I think the counting rate is about 600 a day here in Ontario. Ontario is the largest province, so we are not spared anyway. I think the theme of this conference has been very appropriate this year, and a lot of things to talk about. But I have chosen to talk very briefly, a few minutes. Sorry, disabled certainly. Okay. Let me try to share the screen. Host disabled attendees screening sharing. Something happened there. I can see that host is a disabled attendee screening sharing. Okay.
মনের খবর টিভি যিনি আছেন তাকে অনুরোধ করব যে শেয়ারিংটা অন করে দেওয়ার জন্য।
So I cannot go to my topics. Yeah, that's coming up.
Will you please try again, sir?
Yeah, it's coming right now.
Yeah, thank you.
You see there now?
Yeah, yes, sir. You can see.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I would like to thanks again Professor Shashadri, because he has given a pretty detailed outline about the child adolescent, mental health in changing world. So I'm going to zoom on very briefly on the topics of the children's and adolescent mental health in changing worlds. Although each of the topics I have chosen, we can talk for hours, but we don't have the time. So, child and adolescent mental health in a changing world, I'll very briefly discuss about a series of events happening across the world in recent years. And these events are significantly interfering with children's and adolescents' emotional and growth and the development. Do you see my screen? Do you see in the screen my topics?
Very clearly, Dr. Murad, very clearly.
You can see, sir.
So what is happening here now? These children are feeling their future is uncertain, their mental health is shaken and traumatized. They are finding it hard to adapt and foster the normal mental health in this changing world. And we are now only beginning to understand the scope of the effect of this drastic change happening on the children and adolescent mental health. status. As you know, I am the frontline clinician. Day-to-day practice, I'm seeing so many kids are being affected because of this COVID and other things. And I see them in my outpatient, I see in the inpatient, I see them in my other sites in the program as well. So what are the changing events I've chosen in impacting the child adolescent mental health? I've chosen only few, but there are some more of them. COVID-19 is in the top of the list. Smartphone, social media, refugee children, global citizen, legalization of cannabis, race-related traumatic events, and climate change. So these are events, some of those events has been happening over the last decades, and they're changing their mental health and they're shaping in a new way that we have to tackle over the years coming. Negative effects of COVID-19 pandemic in mental health, consequences of lockdown on children and adolescents. Since December 2019, an outbreak of novel coronavirus disease started from Wuhan, China, and became the pandemic affecting every continent of the world. The COVID-19 outbreak and lockdown may have multiple consequences on the children and adolescents. Now, there are so many ways they have been affected, and I think there needs a detailed discussion, but we don't have the scope and the time here. Some of these events, including like home confinement. Take about here in Canada, we had a lockdown started in 2020, March of 2020, and we just opened our lockdown around beginning of the spring of 2021. And the kids are at home, they are not able to go to school. There's a prolonged school break, and there's a lot of other issues happening like intrafamilial violence because parents are at home and they are not going to work. Constantly there is arguments and fights. Overuse of internet and social media. These are some of the factors which has been influencing the mental health of children and adolescents during this world. I think this is applicable to any part of the world, any continent of the world. The lockdown has an impact, such a significant impact on the mental health and emotional life of the children and adolescent and adult as well. The increased psychiatric disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, as well as grief-related symptoms. This is very important because so many kids has lost their parents, their grandparents, their aunt and uncle, and I have recently treated quite a few children and adolescents with a grief, significant grief complicated with depressions and so on. Now, there is a negative impact of community-based public health measures on the children, adolescents, and families during the COVID-19. What happened? There was a study done here in Ontario. It's called a rapid review, and they have did some research on the literature search from May 2020 to October 2020, and they came up with some of the findings, which is, I think, applicable everywhere. Children's mental health and behavior have been overall negatively impacted in COVID-19. Young children were presented with more behavior difficulties and hyperactivity and conduct problem, and older children and adolescents more likely to have increased anxiety and depression symptoms, and increased suicidal ideation and increased frequency of alcohol consumption. And alcohol consumption is not only the adolescent, also across the adult population here as well. Other findings with this rapid review is including decreased physical activity. Most of the kids were at home, they were eating more, they are not sleeping because they've been with the electronics, increased sedentary time and screen time, increased food insecurity. There's everywhere there is a scarcity of food because the supply channel has been closed down. Most of our foods are coming from other part of the province like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, or a lot of the vegetables and fruits are coming from California or Florida. And as you know, there was a restriction between the travel and transportation, so food channel was somehow been disrupted, and there's always a chaos and panic. Health services utilization and tertiary care services, emergency department and hospitalization decreased substantially during the early month of the COVID. The reason being that because of the lockdown, parents didn't want to take the children to the hospital when they're sick. Parents were panicking that if they go to the hospital, then they might get the COVID. However, it was reported the illness severity increased, visit of mental health increased in later month of the pandemic. There may have been some parents delaying care for the children due to the fear of acquiring COVID-19 infection in children. I believe that happens same in Bangladesh as well. Now, changing gear, the smartphone and the social media use. This has become almost like a pandemic all over the world. In the last decade, increasing mental health distress and treatment of mental health condition among youth in North America are allowed a steep rise in the use of smartphone and social media by children and adolescents. They've been spending hours and hours and hours with the electronics and the social media. Evidence from a variety of cross-sectional, longitudinal, and empirical studies implicate that smartphone and the social media increase the mental health, self-injurious behavior, and suicidality among the youth. Negative effects appear to be the greatest among the girls. The social media may facilitate cyberbullying and promote the self-harm and suicidality among the youth. And this has been over the decades started to increase, and I have treated many kids with the cyberbullying resulted in low self-esteem, self-harm behavior, severe anxiety. Some of them has a social anxiety, they develop panic disorder. They stop going to the school because of the cyberbullying. A lot of them came with a self-harm behavior, admitted to the hospital. We had to treat them. So it has been becoming rampant. High proportion of youth engaging in heavy smartphone use result in chronic sleep deprivation, negative effect on cognition, academic performance, and socio-economic emotional functioning. Now, if a child or adolescent spend hours and hours at night and not able to sleep, obviously next morning the child or adolescent will be very tired and cognitive function will be quite decreased, will not be able to pay attention and not be able to do the academic performance better. So it is a kind of chain of events happening. Refugee children, they are the global citizens. They are not children anymore. They are lost citizen, a lost generation. As you know, Bangladesh has taken over 800,000 Rohingya refugees. And these children, I'm just giving some other example like Syria, we have taken in Canada 40,000 refugee adult and children. And more recently, we are accepting another 40,000 children and adult refugee from Afghanistan. So 80,000 we have. It is a peanut for Bangladesh because Bangladesh has taken much more larger scale of refugee. And these children are very vulnerable. They're invisible, they're voiceless, and they're on the run. The human-induced environmental disaster, local and global conflicts, inequitable distribution of wealth have resulted in this transnational refugees status. Many unaccompanied children and adolescents taking risky journeys to flee the adverse circumstances and political persecution. Often, I think you see that the boats are sinking in the sea when they're crossing the sea and trying to come to the Europe and North America and other places. And this, some of the children has a scar of this horrible experience during the journey. And I see a lot of the kids with a significant anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that takes years and years and years to heal. So refugee children are vulnerable to develop mental health disorder. The grueling journey of the multiple stressors faced with the refugee children and the risk of psychiatric disorders. Unaccompanied refugee migrant children have higher prevalence of mental health disorder than accompanied refugee children. Long after reaching host country, refugee, migrant, and asylum-seeking juvenile continue to face adversity in the form of acculturation. And this is a very, very important because they lose their culture, they lose their custom, they lose their value, they lose their language, they lose their religion, and that is become very, very difficult for the refugee as well. Legalization of cannabis. This is a very important issue here in, I would say, Canada and the other European country. There was a lot of controversial questions why the cannabis has been legalized. And I think because the government has been losing a lot of profit because it was going through under the black market, and there no revenue was being found. Just to give you an example, cannabis has been legalized in Canada in 2018, and the pot shop, they call pot or hashish or marijuana, whatever you say, the pot shop has grown like a mushroom. Here in Toronto, we have over 300 pot shops now available. So what happened? Although there is a age limit, but still the younger populations are accepting the cannabis so randomly or so rapidly or readily. The high level of tetrahydrocannabinol oil or THC in cannabis produce have a very significant adverse effect in the developing brain. The most serious complication of cannabis use in the development of psychosis, and now it is clear that cannabis with a high level of THC can contribute psychosis as well. Just I want to say that right now, at this moment, I have a patient in my ward, only a 15-year-old boy. He came with a substance-induced psychosis. He's been admitted right now, and I'm treating him. And I have seen him about 3 years ago. He was 13. At the time, the diagnosis was ADHD and ODD. And he was smoking drug on and off. Now he is becoming addicted, and he's developed psychosis. Unfortunately, the long-term outcome is not very good because his insight and judgment is very poor. And this is not, he is not the only example. I am seeing day in and day out so many kids with a minor problem like anxiety, depression, psychosis at the last bottom end. And interesting enough, after several episodes of psychosis with substance abuse, when they develop permanently psychosis, it is extremely difficult to differentiate between schizophrenia and substance-induced psychosis. Is almost undifferentiated. So especially the frequent use and the females are associated with the elevated levels of internalizing like anxiety and depression, and externalizing like a conduct problem and attention deficit disorder is very common. And this is another changing events we are facing that we are tackling now in Europe and North America and Europe, and obviously in the developing country as well. I think Professor Shashadri mentioned some of the underprivileged children are affected, how they're affected. Now, race-related traumatic events, which is, as you know, the Black Lives Matter. After the death of George Floyd here in USA, there's a wave of unrest and police killing and death and destruction happened over the years, over the last 2 years. And how these children are affected. Traditionally, African American children had been historically having a low suicide rate than their white peers. The recent study shows that suicide rates had been steadily increasing in African American children and for more than 2 decades. Recent research suggests that police killing directed at members of their racial ethnic group are related to poor mental health outcomes. Viewing extreme violence, terrorism, think about the France, the Paris terrorism, and so many others are happening. Extreme terrorism and violence, either directly by witnessing the act or indirectly watching them in media, affects children's mental health and emotion as well. And these are the changing events happening. This is the last one I'm talking about, the climate change, which is just emerging right now. The climate anxiety and people a call to action. Climate change poses a major threat to human health. Natural disaster precipitated by climate change, including hurricane, heat wave, wildfire, we are seeing all the time, day in and day out. Like in the west of Canada, in British Columbia, Alberta, there is a fire in the California. There's always everywhere. Every year there is a fire. Now in Europe as well, there are so many countries. There has never been a fire like Spain and Portugal, and those places. You hear the news that the wildfire is going on, and tornado and flood. Most of the times in the southern part of the USA, like uh, southern borders of the USA, there's a flood going on. This brings the mental health issues, psychological effect. It increases the anxiety, depression, PTSD. Climate anxiety symptoms include panic attacks, insomnia, and obsessions. And climate distress negatively affects mental health and increase stress-related and substance use disorders. Some of the young climate activists like Greta Thunberg showed that young are anxious about their collective future. So I have outlined only the few management strategy, but there's a lot to discuss. Multiple disturbing events are happening in recent years, and world is very unsettled. A sense of fear and anxiety around the globe. This phenomenon has led a short-term as well as long-term mental health and psychosocial implication for children and adolescents. The quality and magnitude of the impact on minors is determined by many vulnerabilities, which include the developmental age, educational status, pre-existing mental health condition, being economically underprivileged, or being quarantined due to the infections and fear infections. There is a pressing need for evidence-based elaborative plans of action to treat the for psychiatric management and psychosocial support to the vulnerable children and adolescents during this crisis period. Psychosocial support services should be focused on developing the healthy coping mechanism. This is very important during give them some coping skills during the current pandemic and post-pandemic period, because the kids are going through very, very traumatic and anxiety day in and day out. Innovative child and adolescent mental health policies should be promoted with a collaborative network of psychiatrists, psychologists, pediatricians, and other frontline mental health clinicians. So in conclusion, the recent global pandemic has highlighted a series of major changing events around the world that have had lasting impact on our lifestyles. Some of the calamity will continue to happen for years to come. We are now starting to understand the scope of the effect of these drastic changes happening on the children and adolescent mental health status. Mental health clinicians from all disciplines need to identify and provide the management to the vulnerable children at risk for developing mental health disorders and provide effective treatment for those who are already suffering. So that concludes my talk, and these are the references I have taken from various journals, the current journals as well. Okay. Now I think the floor is open for question and answer. I think myself and Professor Shesharji will be able to spend some time. Thank you very much indeed for listening my talk.
Thank you, sir, for your nice deliberation. And I was going back to the class of MD Child and Psychiatry in my memories that you have taken our classes there. A lot of things I have learned from you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If there is no question at present, I think. So we are going to the Honorable panel of experts. As Professor Muhammad S.I. Mullik sir has told that he has some matters. So I request Professor
Dr.
Mullik.
Niaz, sorry to interrupt. I didn't write the question, but I have a question to Professor Shekhar Sheshadri about Sambad. The project he started for the Indian. Can I ask the question now?
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me.
Please.
Shekhar sir, can I ask about the project, the objective of the project, and how long time will take to complete the project you taken for the and total, that means under Sangbad? It's a short question for you. Just.
Yeah. Biplava, this is a service project. It is not a research project. Like I said, I'm a firm believer in public child mental health. So this is a service project. And in principle, we are funded for 5 years. But because of COVID, since we have not been able to travel and we have not used a lot of our travel budget, it's quite likely that we can continue beyond 5 years without a financial extension. The second issue is that we have within 15 months of operation, this service project has become so big that as early as yesterday, there was we have a Azad Atmanirbhar Bharat program going on from October 2nd, Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, to November 14th, Jawaharlal Nehru's birthday, where we are looking at the National Legal Services Authority has been organizing it to basically simplify governance and legal systems for the common man across the country. So they held a valedictory yesterday in Vigyan Bhavan in Delhi, and the Honorable Minister of Women and Child, who basically supports the program, had actually stated their announcing of how Samvad is actually working in bridging that gap between mental health and law, mental health and child protection, mental health and education, and creating therefore a scaffolding for children's well. So we put in a proposal because, like I said, child protection is not going to end. This is not polio or smallpox. That this be elevated from a project status to a center status. And if we have all the ministerial paperwork, then we may get elevated to a center status, in which case we can work in perpetuity. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Samvad has an obligation to the South Asia region as well. Northeast South Asia Mental Health Alliance, which you're familiar with, because 2 years ago we'd held the meeting in Dhaka, which you people were so kind to want to really extend the idea of child protection and mental health. Last thing I wanted to say is that it is very likely that 2 years from now, I have actually never wanted any executive position in associations. I'm a field worker, I'm a soldier on the field, a frontline worker. But because I'm retiring on November 30th, and I have still a lot of energy and things to do, I may take over as president of the Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health 2 years from now. Dr. Debashish Konar from Bardhaman will be taking over as president now. And 2 years later, when I take over as president, my intention is to network and form an alliance between ICAM, Bacamh, Sri Lanka College of Child Psychiatry, any association in Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, Pakistan that looks, and form an alliance and network so that we continue to support each other, particularly where capacity building, sharing of material, and continued professional development is concerned. This is my promise to Bangladesh and to Bacamh.
Thank you, sir, for your Excellent words, we have the enthusiasm that we'll work together and have your knowledge and expertise, and also and I think that Bacamh will be enriched, and the Bangladeshi child and adolescent population will be uh, enriched by your contributions, sir. Sir, Professor Mohammad S.I. Mullik, sir, panel of expert, sir, I request you to say something from, about today's uh, our theme and the presenters.
Thank you, Niaz. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Okay. So, President of this webinar and my beloved two presenters and the panel of experts and the listener, my 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 cordial and endless love to all for it. Really, I can remember that in 2004 in Khabor meeting, I met Shekhar, and I realized that he's a man of potentiality that can help us for mutual cooperation that he actually Shekhar mentioned in his last talk. And all of you know that in 2008 I met Dr. Vogt, and he is continuously his friend of us and contributing a use that we actually really grateful. Both two presenters is our real friend, and they are always ready to help us in terms of continuous giving. Congratulations to both presenters for highlighting the important issue. Actually, both the presentation is really enriched with very important point. And if we can see the changes or the risk factors, in alternatively can say it is a risk factor. These factors range from the early childhood experience to the climate change, rather to say the climate crisis now. The Mother Earth is really in dying state, and we are proceeding all of the people of the world actually become conscious now and recognize that these are really a problem. And Dr. Goff especially added the important issue that legalization of cannabis and its adversity. So adversity is there, and from both the presenters, we can realize that the problem was earlier existing, and the insult is become huge enough, and particularly the marginalization and the effect of migration, etc., is so big, huge, and this COVID actually added the insult to the injury and open up the problem very nakedly. I think it is nakedly because people now aware that problem was there in a iceberg form, and the COVID actually uh, increased the sensitivity as well as awareness and understanding about the mental health problem. So it has a very positive effect also. The people are now aware about this situation. And I would like to mention here all the organization related to pediatric services. They in USA they declared the mental health emergency in 27th of October. So it is no doubt that the problem is high. And now the important question that what we can do for this one. And already Shekhar mentioned the important service sources, Sambad. This is really appreciating, and I think time-oriented action. I can recall that Shekhar always produces a lot of resources, and it is open for all. And this service is actually targeted to more marginalized people. That is important issue. And finally, what he mentioned is that the mutual cooperation, understanding, and sharing, and the responsibility, sharing the responsibility and burden, and exchanging views are very important now. And the situation is such an worse condition that no one, either in poor country or rich country, cannot go isolatedly to combat these issues. So we have to find out the ways, and I would like to mention one way is that the telehealth, though there is a lot of adversity on the digitalization, but it has the positive aspect that we can use it with low cost treatment service. And you know that the direct CBT and the online CBT has almost equal efficacy in ultimately in uh, long term assessment of meta analysis about the effect size of CBT and everything. So we have to find out the alternative ways. So mutual understanding and cooperation, as well as involvement of the multiple agencies. Particularly, I would like to emphasize in our region that service should be provided by the school mental health. So that must be very strengthful. And already Shekhar mentioned that the family is suffering. We have to develop the service or support for the family and all action related to funding. And I think we have to advocate, we have to raise the issue to allocate much more fund for our children to save our nation as well as save the world also. So with this few word, I would like to thank to the organizer, and I hope that Bacamh will do some initiative for regional and universal collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
I am joining with you.
Sir, thank you, sir. Professor Farooq, sir, we welcome you to the webinar. Immediate past president of Bangladesh Association for Child and Mental Health. And before going to the next panel of experts, I want to say that this is international webinar on 14th Bacamh Annual Conference. The theme is Child and Adolescent Mental Health in Changing World. Our media partner is Moner Khabor TV, and our today's sponsor is Bacamh Pharmaceuticals Limited. And the present treasurer of this executive committee, Dr. Sifati Sai, took all the pain to communicate with the foreign speakers so that it is in we are here today. So Professor Syed Mahfuzul Haq, the teacher of our teacher, the professor of our professors, is renowned professor of child and psychiatry in Chittagong. And I'll request Professor Syed Mahfuzul Haq sir to say something about this thing and the presentation. Any comments or questions? Sir? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nias. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening to all. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers who have invited me to act as an expert, because I am a member of the panel of experts, though I am not a child psychiatrist, but I am doing practice in psychiatry, so I have to do everything as an eclectic psychiatry. So far, we have heard from two eminent child and mental health experts, and both of them are known to me. One is, but uh, they may not know me, but I know them through Bacamh and other parts. Actually, I met Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri when I was in Imans in 84 and 89 as a WHO fellow. But I was not lucky enough to work with him because I was with Professor S.M. Chanavasavanna and with B.N. Gangadhar. Anyway, I knew Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri from there. Today, actually, we have heard something on the uh, mental health of our children or adolescents during the changing period. Actually, the world is changing every day, every moment. Sometimes it changes slowly, sometimes it changes very rapidly. And we have seen a rapid change during the last few months. So, as a during COVID and now as a post-COVID era. And Professor Sheshadri has narrated very lucidly in his own way the changes during the normal period and during the post-COVID period. And the thing we think that it also happens in our own country, in our country also. And he has rightly pointed out one thing about the multidisciplinary approach. Actually, we had seen during the COVID era that without going through multidisciplinary approach, it is very difficult to reach the people of our country because our source is not that enough to reach everybody. But we have a number of child psychiatrists. Professor Malik was the first child psychiatrist in our country. Nowadays, uh, his active support has produced a few child psychiatrists, but a handful of psychiatrists cannot help the bulk of children who are suffering. So we have to take the help of others to find out the problems, and we have to take the help of others to solve them. Uh, I would mention here, or I would like to point out here, that in Samvad, I think it is as it is a service-oriented program. But here, as a retired person who was in a teaching profession, I would suggest that the basics of child mental health should be taught to the future doctors of our country because we won't be getting enough psychiatrists to reach the common people. So we have to teach the basics, the most basics of child mental health, or most basics of mental health to the future doctors of our country so that we can reach the general people of this work. Because the 300 psychiatrists or 220 child mental health experts cannot reach the bulk of children because in our country, you know, the population, the vast majority of our population are children. Anyway, about Dr. Murad, actually, I possibly didn't attend the last Bacamh session where he was there, but today he had gone through his paper very lucidly, and he highlighted besides COVID's other areas like smartphones, social medias, refugee problems, and addiction problems. Those everything is present in our country, and we have to address those problems also. And they have given some clues or they have given some suggestions And I think, and our Professor Malik also pointed out what we can do with this problem. And this is high time that we take an multidisciplinary approach to address these problems in our country. And it is one suggestion from a person like me that some child mental health experts, they should dedicate themselves. I don't know how they would be doing in our country, because in our country, actually, most of us, we are doing eclectic psychiatry. Actually, maybe I am a child psychiatrist, but I have to see adult patients. I have to see geriatric patients. I have to see all types of patients. So there should be persons who would dedicate themselves to the care of the child and adolescent mental health. In that case, I think they would be more acceptable to the people who need support. And I think you would consider these things. And there are other members of our panel who would be talking of this. And I must thank the organizers again, the Bacamh, the Moner, Khabor, and my two friends who have taught or who have talked on this. And I have enriched myself. And I think I can help others, because in our country, I'm a retired person, but I'm working consultant as a general psychiatrist, and I try to help people of children's age who come to me. Actually, I'm not in a position to help them directly in most of the cases. So I am not usually to help them directly. Try to send them to the proper place. I am not usually to the changing child and mental health. So I am finding to the changing of child and adolescent psychiatry. I'm finding to the, unfortunately, in my place in Chittagong, medical college, and finding 2 years back, unfortunately, we had started a child medical college, and finding 2 years back, unfortunately, we had started a number of and finding that in practice, it's not working there. So I think that Bacamh will see into the matter, because my city is the second city in Bangladesh, and and it will see into the matter. And I think mental health, and and it will see into the matter. Child mental health, and we can see into the matter as one of them to serve in Chittagong, at least for a few years, so that the people of this part of the, it sounds that I'm talking about the regional things, so that the people of this part of cannot develop. It sounds that I'm talking about you cannot develop things, so that the people of we have global experts. It sounds that I'm you cannot develop things, so that thank you very much. Thank you all again for hearing me. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Professor Syed Mahfuzul Haq sir, for your Professor Biplab sir, to say something.
Thank you, Niaz, for giving me the opportunity, and definitely thanks again for including me in the panelist of this very prestigious international webinar. All of my teachers and the renowned psychiatrists from Bangladesh are added into this webinar, so it's a great opportunity for me. And my very that means I like him very much, Professor Shekhar Seshadri, from the very beginning when I met him, and Professor Murad Bak. I know from the last 10 or 12 years. He has been giving the lectures and other academic sessions for our student and also for me also. So it's a big opportunity for me. I want not to make my lecture bigger. I just want to point two things. Professor Murad Bhat, which has given in his lecture the information, I think it is the real picture of all over the world, not only about Canada and the eastern on that portion of the world, and India, Bangladesh also have the same scenario, and definitely regarding the migration issue, it's a big issue for especially not only for COVID situation, for any time to adjust with the new situation and to maintain well mental health. So thank you, sir, for giving us the information and the way they are suffering, not only for the COVID situation, for the last few years also. And about Murad Bak and his presentation, sir, I again want to mention it is not easy to connect the different sections, different that means the policy makers into the same umbrella, and to make a policy for the mental health of not only for the children, for any age. It's a very difficult work that you have been started. So again, congratulations. And the COVID situation, I will not say always it's a negative, it has given the negative impact. In this webinar, we are connected from Bangladesh, from India, from Canada. It is a big opportunity, and we are getting some information, some lectures, some advice, some exchange of knowledge from all over the world. So we can use these opportunities. And you mentioned about to connect with the other associations of India, Pakistan, and other Sri Lanka, Nepal. I think it's a big opportunity for us. So hope for the best to connect with the world biggest psychiatrists, psychologists, and other experts, and our future psychiatrists and child psychiatrists will be benefited, and hoping to get best opportunity to take the best opportunities and best knowledge from all of you. Thank you again. Thanks again. And lastly, for our students and for the learner, this webinar will remain in our YouTube. You can see or watch whenever you are getting times. This is not the last time. That means the live time is the last time. You will get opportunity to watch the presentation of Professor Murad Bak and Shekhar sir. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir, for your nice and directive speech to us. And the information you shared, that the Moner Khabor TV website, we have the two presentations there. Thank you, sir. I now request Professor Shah Alam sir, who was the former professor of psychotherapy in National Institute of Mental Health. And sir, Professor Shah Alam sir, would you please say something? Do you have?
Yeah, you have lost Professor Shah Alam sir. Shah Alam sir is
I don't see
not in
Professor Shah Alam
connection.
sir here.
Okay, now to Professor Mustafizur Rahman sir. He was also a professor of National Institute of Mental Health. Professor Mustafiz sir, please say something about this year's theme and the presentations. Thank you, sir.
Can you hear? Yes.
Sir, শোনা যাচ্ছে স্যার?
Yes,
শোনা
sir.
যাচ্ছে?
জি স্যার।
জি স্যার, ভালো করে শোনা যায়।
I am very delighted to say something about in this webinar, to say something about mental health in a changing world. I have I am very pleased to see Professor Shekhar Seshadri and Professor Dr. Syed Murad Bhakt. I have learned many things from Professor Shekhar Seshadri when I was in Bangalore in 1995. Now again I have learned many things from him, but I could not if I did not see him in 2020 in uh, Sri Mongol Hotel Grand Grand Sultan, then it was very difficult for me to recognize him. But as I have seen him there, I have met him there. Now I can easily recognize him. I think he will also recognize me. And what Dr. Murad Bhakt and Dr. Shekhar Seshadri has expressed, has outlined many areas of child and mental health, and we are only to learn from them. Because the child and mental health is very, in our country especially, is a very neglected area, and it is not the demand that we should uh, we should the service or the treatment, the management of child and mental is not our demand. Our demand is to as to how to our country, our society, our government, our families, even the individual can appreciate this problem. If we can appreciate it very easily, we can appreciate it really, then we can go ahead about this problem. So the only thing problem is that our even in our country, when our mental health is not even so much flourished. So if the mental health is flourished, it will carry along with this the child mental health. So I think our mental health, especially as adults, child mental health, as because they are the children and adolescents are the future of the country. Their mental health should go preference over the child, over the adolescent mental health, as because today's child is the future future leader of the society, future leader of the country. So we should not neglect the adult mental health, the mental health problem of the adolescents and child and adolescent. I hope this webinar, international webinar, will carry a great opportunity for us as well as for our society, for our mental health professionals to go ahead to think clearly, to think differently about our problems and to solve them accordingly. I appreciate this. I appreciate this. Those who have engaged, those who have organized this webinar, and I am thankful to them, especially there were two dignified keynote speakers, our panelists, the Moner Khabor and others who are Niaz and others who have organized this webinar. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, Professor Mustafizur Rahman, sir, because Professor Shekhar Seshadri is showing us.
That's the Seshadri, perhaps that people remember.
Professor Mustafi, sir, well, I want to say one thing, sir, that I was your student in NIMH during my FCP psychiatry period, and child and adolescent psychiatry has been enriched by your contribution and also other psychiatrists' contribution, because there is no there is a scarcity of child and adolescent psychiatrists in Bangladesh. So all psychiatrists are involved in the management of child and adolescent mental health problems in Bangladesh. So thank you, Professor Mustafizur Rahman, sir. Okay. We have with us Professor Dr. Mohammad Farooq Alam, sir. He's the
Niyaz, ji.
just past president of
Sorry,
Bangladesh Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, and also former director of National Institute of Mental Health, and professor of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, National Institute of Mental Health. So, sir, do please say something to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Niyaz. This is very good time. In fact, we are very much excited to see this two very learned speakers who are very much famous in the international arena and also very much linked and intimated to us. Professor Dr. Shekhar Seshadri and Professor Dr. Murad Bakht, both are our friends. Possibly this is the first time we are missing Dr. Murad Bakht. He always comes from thousands of miles away to Bangladesh to join our Bacamh, but this is the first time possibly he has missed because of the corona. We are grateful to Dr. Murad Bakht really, and he has contributed and he has supported a lot our Bacamh. Dr. Shekhar Seshadri also is a great psychiatrist, great child psychiatrist. He works very well in the field of the child abuse. I was with him in 1999. It was a very great time. So both of them are very important to us. Child and adolescent mental health in the changing world. If we talk about child and mental health in Bangladesh, in the changing situation of Bangladesh, I think we have some problems that are more important than the issues we have discussed. During Corona, the problems of mental health problems among children and adolescents are almost same around the world. It may vary depending on the socio-cultural context of different countries, but anxiety, depression, isolation, internet addiction, game addiction, child abuse, these are almost same in all around the world. We have conducted our National Mental Health Survey in 2019, only 2 years back, and we saw the intellectual disability is the most important issue of children and adolescents in Bangladesh. Surprisingly, we got more than 4% of children in Bangladesh are suffering from intellectual problem or intellectual disability. This is very dangerous. 4% of the country's children are mentally slow. I think the most important cause behind this is perinatal birth injuries. Poor maternal care and home delivery is still a frequent practice in Bangladesh. And because of this, perinatal injuries are there, neonatal asphyxia, neonatal convulsion, everything is very common. And that's why the IQ is decreasing in the country. So to improve the situation of the children in Bangladesh, I think attention should be given to the maternal care, especially the perinatal care. The intellectual disabilities due to genetic causes are almost same around the world, but these are the additional factors. Those are prevailing in Bangladesh, including India and other Southeast countries. So this is very important, I think, intellectual disability. And intellectual disability is also related with epilepsy and other mental disorders also, because those children who have brain damage, they are 4 times more likely to develop the mental disorders in the subsequent life. So ID is not an isolated thing. ID also gives rise to mental disorders and also epilepsy and other academic problems and social problems. I think this is very important issue. Like other countries, in Bangladesh, the internet addiction, game addiction, mobile addiction, this is very much prevalent in the country now. And the academic problem is also related with this, because children are waking up at night and they sleep at day. Schools are closed during Corona period, and they took the advantage of the situation. And parents are also busy with the mobiles and other issues. So everything is giving rise to a complex form of problems: game addiction, internet addiction, academic problem, porn addiction, sleep disorders. Everything. I think lots of problems are there. This is also a very challenging issue in Bangladesh also. Sexual abuse. This is also very much prevalent, though we do not talk much about it. Dr. Shekhar Seshadri talks very much about sexual abuse in India, Bangladesh, and around the globe. During COVID situation, the sexual abuse possibly has risen, though we do not have data at hand. So this is another issue I think we should give attention to, because physical abuse and sexual abuse And child neglect, this is also common in Bangladesh. Drug addiction is another issue in Bangladesh and challenging issue. And we have conducted survey 2 years back around the whole country, throughout the whole country, and we got 2.9% of the children are suffering from drug addiction. 2.9%, almost 3% of children are having drug problems. And among these drugs, cannabis and amphetamine are at the highest position. So 3% of the child population are suffering from drug addictions or substance use problem. This is also very much alarming because this substance use also gives rise to a lot of mental health problems, including suicide and other issues. Early marriage and early pregnancy and dowry, these are the issues to address in Bangladesh to protect the child mental health, I think. A 16-year-old girl or 17-year-old girl are getting married and get pregnancy after a few months. And ultimately they are pressurized for dowry from their in-laws' house. Lots of issues are there, and ultimately they commit suicide. In the Western world, male person, those who are aged, they commit suicide. Aged male commit suicide. In southeastern part of this world, especially in Bangladesh, the young girl, they are committing suicide. So I think these are the challenging issues in Bangladesh. And among other issues, those are very much important around the globe in respect of mental health of children and adolescents. I think in Bangladesh, we should give attention to these issues very much. And our policymakers, they should make a strategy and policy strategy and action program depending on these vital issues. We have evidences at hand. In our National Mental Health Survey 2019, we have got a lot of evidences, and some of them I have mentioned. If we do not design policy and strategy and action program depending on these evidences, I think the achievement of our goal will be delayed. So we should depend on evidences, and we should give attention to those, and we should design programs. And our foreign partners like Dr. Shekhar Sheradri and Dr. Murad Bab, they will be with us and they will be supporting us. But we need to take our own responsibilities, and we should motivate our government. We can organize seminar, we can do symposia, we can invite the foreign speakers, but we cannot implement programs. Government help is very much important. This decade, everybody is telling that in Bangladesh, this is the golden period but for mental health in Bangladesh. The current time is the golden time for mental health in Bangladesh. I admit, but at the same time, I want to say no administrative change has occurred during the last decade in Bangladesh. No administrative change. We are asking for a mental health wing in DGSS, in DG office, under Ministry of Health and Welfare. We are asking for a wing in the Ministry of Health so they can look after the mental health in Bangladesh. We are doing a lot of things, but I think at the administrative level, we should put pressure to have some changes at the administrative levels. And our foreign speakers and our all other people who are involved with the mental health development, especially child mental health development in Bangladesh, they should all pressurize government and other stakeholders to give importance to mental health and to make some administrative change at the government level. Otherwise, the achievement of the goal will be far delayed, I think. These are the some issues I had to talk. Thank you, everybody. Again, I am thanking Dr. Shekhar Sheradri and Dr. Murad Bab. They are always with us. We feel confident when they talk with us. This is our good luck. These two persons are always with us. Thank you, everybody who have joined the program.
Thank you, Professor Farooq Alam sir, for your nice speech, and I've learned a lot from you. And our next panel of experts is Professor Abu Taher sir. He's the professor and head of the Department of Psychiatry in Bogura Medical College. And he has been relentlessly giving his service indoor and outdoor patient department of the medical college he served there. And Professor Abu Taher sir, would you please say something about today's theme and also the presentations? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
It is international webinar of 4th annual conference of Bangladesh Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Honorable Chairperson, Professor Dr. Majabin Morshed. She is also President of Bacamh. And learned speakers, Professor Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri and Dr. Murad Bakht. They have very well and detailed presentation. I personally, first of all, express my heartfelt thanks to Professor Sheshadri for his visionary scheme to include neighboring countries in a joint venture in his future tenure as president of Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And Bacamh can also work much like Sambad. And in other aspect of our child and adolescent psychiatry aspect, আমি একটু বাংলায় বলি যে প্রায় 0 থেকে চাইল্ড এন্ড অ্যাডোলেসেন্ট সাইকিয়াট্রি এখন একটা নির্দিষ্ট লক্ষ্য নিয়ে এগিয়ে চলছে। কিছু উদ্যমী সাইকিয়াট্রিস্ট তাদের মেধা এবং কর্মক্ষমতার পুরোটা লাগিয়ে এগিয়ে নিয়ে চলেছে, যার ফলশ্রুতিতে জাতীয় পর্যায়ে নীতি নির্ধারণের ক্ষেত্রে এর প্রতিফলন আমরা দেখছি ইদানিং। জাতীয় মানসিক স্বাস্থ্য ইনস্টিটিউট এবং বিএসএমইউ এর বাইরে বিভিন্ন মেডিকেল কলেজে চাইল্ড এন্ড অ্যাডোলেসেন্ট সাইকিয়াট্রির আলাদা পোস্ট ক্রিয়েটেড হয়েছে রিসেন্টলি। অতি সম্প্রতি বাংলাদেশ কলেজ অফ ফিজিশিয়ানস অ্যান্ড সার্জনস এফসিপিএস চাইল্ড এন্ড অ্যাডোলেসেন্ট সাইকিয়াট্রিতে ফেলোশিপ দেওয়া শুরু হয়েছে। উদ্যমী আরো কয়েকজন নীতি নির্ধারণী পর্যায়ে এবং মিডিয়াতে তাদের যোগ্যতা ভিত্তিক সরব উপস্থিতিতে নাড়া দিতে পেরেছেন যারা ভবিষ্যতের কর্মপরিকল্পনার সাথে থাকেন। আমি শ্রদ্ধা ভরে এদের সকলের কথা স্মরণ করছি। আর এর সাথে শুধু যোগ করতে চাই, শুধু চিকিৎসা ভিত্তিক চিন্তা ভাবনার বাইরে আমরা যেন পরিবার এবং সমাজ ভিত্তিক কার্যক্রম হিসেবে নিতে পারি ব্যাপারটাকে, কারণ পরিবার, সমাজ এবং রাষ্ট্রযন্ত্রের বিভিন্ন বিভাগের সমন্বিত কার্যক্রম ছাড়া আমরা প্রকৃত সফলতা পাবো না, যেটা প্রফেসর শেখার্ডির যে ভিশন তার সাথে খুব মিলে যায়। থ্যাংক ইউ অল। Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your nice and very much informative speech. I want to add another thing that just recently we have we told by Dr. Halaluddin Ahmed, sir.
Oh.
Sir, next, Professor Salahuddin Kausar Biplov, sir, would you please say anything else, sir?
As I told, I have given my lecture. My important point was to mention about 2 things, and I think I mentioned. If anything comes again, then I will add. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Royal, Dr. Sifat has something to say, and again, I will be happy to hear something from Professor Murad Bakht and Shekhar Sheshadri sir.
Thank you, Professor M.A. Salahuddin Kausar Biplov, sir.
Yes, I can mention. I want to mention a small thing. There are some questions. It is the platform of Zoom, and it is directly connected to the Facebook. So there are some questions in the Facebook portion. You can just, if you want, you can keep some question for our expert panelists. I have given one of the question to your chat box. You can see.
Sir, I am not connected with Facebook at present.
No, here in the chat box, I have given one question. Yeah. That was copied from Facebook. I have given to your chat box here.
Yes, sir. স্যার আমরা কি কোয়েশ্চেন অ্যান্সার সেশনে যাব নাকি না নেক্সট প্যানেল অফ এক্সপার্ট?
Just one question for the panelists, and that was given, that was asked by someone in the Facebook. Just one question I copied from there and give it to your chat box.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. By question, one question by SM Riazul Haq, that how will we apply in school and adolescent awareness?
I think he asked about the awareness program, mental health program, and mental health awareness program and activities, how we can apply to our schools. That was his question. I just copied from Facebook and paste into your chat box.
I can respond to that very quickly. There are two issues here. One is a school response centered around the COVID reality, and one is a school response which probably has to be more generic. Let me speak about the generic issue first, that any school mental health program needs to work at 4 levels. At one level, there are universal interventions for all school children. Now, these are called life skills. WHO has defined them as 10 life skills: decision-making, problem-solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, effective communication, interpersonal relationships, empathy, self-awareness, coping with emotions, and coping with stress. These life skills operate in a certain context: decision-making in career choice, decision-making in peer pressure, decision-making in relationship conflicts. And a teacher completes the relationship between life skills and context by the kind of pedagogies that you use in school. Not didactic pedagogies, but experiential pedagogies through role play, through theater, through group discussion, so that you generate alternative. You don't provide solutions, you generate alternative. So these are called universal interventions, so that in future when they are faced with the stress, they immediately remember, yeah, আমার teacher বললাম আমাকে যদি এই রীতি পরিস্থিতি হয় তো পরিহার তুমি এই রীতি করতে যদি তুমি করতে পারবে. So this is universal intervention. Then there are targeted and indicated interventions. So children have concerns. It may not amount to a disorder. Like they saw something on the road, like road rage. What is this, teacher? I don't understand. Why do people behave like this? Or bullying experiences, or some misunderstanding at home. So how do you build in those concerns? So how do you convert the classroom, to quote Vygotsky, into a collaborative community where children and the teachers jointly construct knowledge? Then there are, of course, the more serious issues, learning issues, ADHD, severe conduct issues. And how do you provide a first level response? And how do you recognize both red flags as well as serious issues? And you're linked with tertiary or expert service providers so that you can refer them for. So this is the framework for school mental health program. The idea here is that school mental health and the teacher's relationship can be so critical. It is encapsulated in a very simple story. A 37-year-old techie from Bangladesh, who is now in the United States, comes back to Dhaka, wants to visit a school where he's visiting his teacher who's on the verge of retirement. He goes to his teacher and says, teacher, chinte pari ami kon? The teacher bole na khoka ami chinte pari na, because then he was a innocent looking boy, ab to bada daadi hai, or He says, but teacher, I have not forgotten you. I don't know whether you remember, I come from a very bad family situation, and Shottuti ki ami family sathe amar reconciliation, it has not happened. I don't know what it is that you saw on my face one day. That morning there was a huge problem at home. I remember you did not do me the indignity of calling me out in front of all the classmates. When the class was over, you gently called me aside to say, Koga, tumi mane ami dekhechi tumi khub mane তোমার মুখ মধ্যে একটু টেনশন আছে, what is the issue? And I told her, teacher এরকম বাড়িতে বললাম. It's not that you did anything great. You just said it must have been so difficult to keep all that in your mind and heart. Please feel free to come and speak to me. If there's anything I can possibly do, I'll be happy to help. And teacher, I have never ever forgotten that act of kindness. Children never forget. This is the power of school mental health. So universal interventions, targeted and indicated interventions, and a range there. The last point I want to make is regarding COVID and return to school. 3 issues: safety protocols. So whether it is SMS, still to follow. SMS meaning sanitize, mask, and social distancing. And then teachers and school staff need to be vaccinated. So these are some safety protocols. Second, learning gap. Do not get into a tension about learning. Oh my God, 1.5 year learning. What has happened to children? Mobile phones, exams are there, exit exams, because then you're creating more anxiety. Welcome them. Ashon, Shwagatam. You know, what has happened? You remember that story about that teacher? I think, Murad Bhai, it was, if I'm not mistaken, either in United States or in Canada. The principal during COVID first wave went on cycle, small town, stood outside the door, hello, কেমন আছে? সব ভালো, সব মঙ্গল কুশল, ঠিক আছে, আবার দেখা হবো, and then he goes on to the next place. And children loved it. Principal came and spoke to me. So welcome them and create a slow return to, do not put pressure on. Let them relax. Hear stories that they have to say. Build your own stories. The third issue is, what Poristhiti are they coming back from? Domestic violence at home, even before COVID. Somebody has died in the family, not necessarily because of COVID, some other reason. Grandfather has died, uncle has died. Did they have COVID? Were they hospitalized? So what situation are they coming back from, so that there is a preparedness for the teacher to understand that children are not coming back from a vacuum, that everything is bhalo. They've come back, sab bhalo ache, sab is not bhalo. You need to understand for each child that. So safety protocols, learning issues, and not to create a tension around it, and what circumstances are the children coming back, and to be aware of some of these mental health sensitivities and nuances. To to Chokhat school program, these issues are mentioned in the website I've given, www.nimhanschildprotect.in. Different kinds of programs that you can do in schools. These are called life skills. The manuals are there, ready to use. Please translate, please use, disseminate it. That's the way the world of child mental health will spread. Over to you, Niyaz Bhai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, for your nice answer. Next panel of expert, Dr. Ramendra Kumar Singh Royal. Sir is the head of Department of Psychiatry, Silet MAG Osmani Medical College. And here he is serving as a general psychiatrist and also child nurse psychiatrist. And he is also, we missed him in this conference in Dhaka. So we are connected through webinar. Dr. Ramendra Kumar Sinha Royal.
Thank you, Niyaz, respected chairperson of this session. I might not be the expert, as all experts orators are here, and all experts are here. I'm the junior most probably, and I probably the Niyaz mentioned here, I am the representative of a corner of the country, and serving in the medical college and running the postgraduate course. So I might be here for this purpose. And Professor Sheshadri and the Murad Bokht enlightened us with enormous informations, enormous directives, and that Bokht enlightened the all generous issues and upcoming, some sorts of the upcoming issues that we're facing, and even then he is facing in the Canada. And as India and Bangladesh are sharing the same sociocultural, religious, and geographical background, even then we are shortage in any sorts of the caregiver, that is the service providers we can adopt the Sambat as decision good enough if the some sorts of the Bacamh officials having some sorts of initiatives about these sorts of the positive programs. And obviously, I missed these sessions in the upcoming going to the Dhaka. But even then, I'm every time I'm in the way to have share or viewing or some sorts of the listening, some sorts of words, kind of words from you, so that we can have adopt the some lacks, image gaps in Bangladesh. Even then, in this is the good sessions as the even in the last ICC T20 World Cups, the some sorts of their team is the break the stigma around the mental health. This isn't a golden issues as COVID takes given golden issue in the developing the mental health, even in the child and adolescent mental health. So we should take some sorts of the opportunities to develop ourselves, and obviously the book and the Prasad will help us to uplift ourselves to help our sufferings. Thank you all, and thank you the Bacamh officials.
থ্যাংক ইউ ডক্টর রয়াল দাদা, যে আসলে আপনাকে আমরা অনেক মিস করেছি আজকে ঢাকায়, যদিও আপনি আপনার টিম পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছিলেন একটু ব্যক্তিগত প্রয়োজনে আপনি ছিলেন না, কিন্তু আমি আই হ্যাভ ফেল্ট দ্যাট you are beside me, beside us also, all of us throughout this 14th annual scientific conference and annual general meeting. I would request now Dr. Sifati Said, Treasurer, who has currently working as a Treasurer, and to say something. Sifat.
Thank you, Niyaj Bhai, and please ignore some background noises because I'm feeding my daughter, and I want to express my gratitude to all the panelists and all the attendees, especially to the speakers with whom I have contacted only before 11 days, and on such short notice, they have agreed to present a paper in an international webinar, and I'm very, very grateful to them. And at the same time, I'm also grateful to our panelists, psychiatrists of Bangladesh. There is all the conferences are usually centered in Dhaka. So for our webinar, we wanted to include psychiatrists from all over the country, from other districts. And I'm very happy to see that from Bogura and from Chittagong and from Sylhet, at this very high time of practice. We know that the time we have selected for webinar is the time of private practice. So even then they are here for a long time and encouraging us. That is a wonderful thing. And also I would like to take the privilege of inviting our foreign speakers, Professor Sheshadri and Professor Buck, to our next year's conference, which hopefully by next year this COVID will be much more managed, and you'll be able to travel to Bangladesh. And inshallah, next year we will be arranging our conference in 14th and 15th November. So I want to and the next year's theme we have selected is on service development of mental health, and which is a very much related topic and very much interested topic for Professor Shekhar and also for Dr. Bak. So I would like to definitely will contact and invite them, but also I want to invite them as we have already declared our next year's conference. And I thank Dr. Niyaj Bhai Ahmad, our Secretary General, who has who is moderating and coordinating the whole session, and also our president, Professor Nahid, and President-elect Dr. Hilaluddin Ahmed. And thanks a lot for including me and giving me some chance to talk about and to listen to some wonderful things. And we will certainly work on some directives that we have listened today, like doing some policy and service development and doing some regional collaborations. And we'll hope that all of you will be with Bacamh whenever you are called upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sifat. She's now the assistant professor of psychiatry in Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Medical University, Department of Psychiatry, and also she has I think that a great role in the Bangladesh Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Now it's time for Thanksgiving. I request Dr. Hilaluddin Ahmed, sir. Sir, are you here, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Niaz Mohammad Khan, and I am hearing you all and giving my gratitude and thanks first to the speakers, the renowned speakers. It is my great honor to give some vote of thanks in these August occasions. And the Professor Shekhar Seshadri also defined the image gap. Also, he mentioned the image gap program, which is also ongoing in Bangladesh. And the Shambhat is a very well organized project he described to us. And I'm giving my thanks to the Professor Shekhar Seshadri, and also giving my thanks to Professor Dr. Murad Bok. And Murad Bok sir is my own teachers also, and he is very good friend of Bangladesh and a good friend of Bacamh. And also we heard from him the neo-normal life and the child and adolescent mental health. And he is also describing not only the context of the developed world like Canada, he also mentioned also the lower and middle income countries also in the new normal life in the child and adolescent mental health. And thank you, Shekhar Seshadri sir. Sir, give me a greetings for my collection of my masks. It's collected from several countries of the world. Thank you, sir. That's our message to me. And I also giving my thanks to the whole organizer, especially our partner Moner Bondhu. The Moner Bondhu is the family of the psychiatry, one of the family member of our psychiatry family. And
Moner Khabor.
Oh, sorry, Moner Khabor. I'm giving my thanks to the Moner Khabor. Moner Khabor is our family member of the psychiatry, and the Moner Khabor is always with us. And Moner Khabor is not only the program of the BAP or not only the program within the Bacamh. Moner Khabor is also providing all the news and the views regarding any mental health activities ongoing in the Bangladesh in the government and non-government organizations. And Professor Salahuddin Kausar Biplab sir is the key person of this Moner Khabor, and I am giving my thanks to the Moner Khabor also for doing this webinar today, international webinar. And I'm giving my thanks to the Beacon Pharmaceuticals also, those who are the scientific partner of this webinar. And also I'm giving the thanks to Dr. Shifa Desai, who took lots of pain to organize this webinar. And also my very favorite colleague, Dr. Niaz Mohammad Khan, and he also organized such a good conference, today's conference, also today's seminar. And at last but not least, I giving my thanks to all the panelists, all of my teachers, all of my panelists from Dhaka to Bogura, from Chittagong. My direct teachers is my undergrad level teachers is the Mahfuz sir during my MBBS level, and also my teachers from the postgraduate level, all the teachers we have here. I giving my thanks to them. And I give my thanks and gratitude to Professor Nahid Mahajamin Morshed Madam, the president of the Bacamh. So I giving my thanks to all, and thanks to from my personal side to give me opportunities, a few words in this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hilaluddin Ahmed, sir, for your nice speech and Thanksgiving. Now I request again Professor Dr. Nahid Mazhabin Morshid Madam, the
নিয়াজ আমার একটা রিকোয়েস্ট হলো যে বিফোর কনক্লুডিং বাই by our president, if Professor Murad Bok sir, if he wants to say something for our students and for the total whole organization organizing the webinar, for even Sheshadri sir, last 1 or 2 words within by 2 words.
Thank you so much for inviting me to give a talk, which was very brief. I've been involved with the Bacamh for many years. I think we are opening our eyes what is happening in the world, and we have to be careful about how we are dealing with our children. I think Professor Sheshadri talked a little bit about the school mental health. You know, the school is the primary place for identifying the mental health problem, and the teacher is the main source of source that who can remain connected with the children and the family. Just to give talk few words about the mental health services, children, school mental health services here in Canada, although it is a very well developed, well structured program here, but which is very important for us to take some lesson for developing country as well. You know, the school mental health, very resourceful here. We have the teacher, they're well educated about the mental health problem. They identify the learning problem for the children. They identify any trauma or abuse happening at home, because they remain very well connected with the child and the family. They are well about whether the child is getting sick due to the depression or anxiety, and they communicate these to the school child and youth worker, school social worker, school psychologist. And when this kid has been identified, they communicate with the parents and they convince the parents the child is sick, and then they refer the patient to the appropriate places like mental health agencies and for psychiatric assessment and so on. So I think we have to develop in developing countries like a model, although it is not possible. The resource is very, very limited. But I think we should try to enrich the school. You know, maybe take a pilot study to a couple of schools, you know, in the main city in Dhaka, and show the government how important it is, the mental health services for children and adolescents in the schools, starting on the school. And because they are the primary place where they spend most of their waking time. If you divide the hours in a day, 24 hours, then eight hours they're in the school, and next 8 hours they're at home, they're sleeping, and maybe few hours with the parents. So that most of their activities are in the school. So this is very important. The other things, couple of things which is emerging, like a drug and, you know, I mentioned a little bit about that drug and substance abuse problem, which is like not an epidemic, it's a pandemic. All countries are affected, and I think we should learn how to identify the drug and substance abuse and how to tackle them. This is very, very important. Here there are so much developed country. We don't want to. Maybe they have a rehab program and they have a substance abuse counseling program and all kind of thing, but at least to provide the basic necessary treatment for them. And the other things like I talked a little bit about the refugee problem, which is all over the countries, all over the world, and we are tackling here. I think the developing countries are tackling the same way, and we have to understand these vulnerable kids, when they're growing up, they have so much of trauma and they carry in their life, but they are they are not being seen, or they're not being given any support for them. Beside that, the Bacamh you have been arranging every year in the good time and in the bad time, and I'm very glad to see that you have developed some webinar and webinar presentation. This is very, very common now in the Western world, and we are always doing the webinar presentation here now. One more top points about the telemedicine. Telemedicine has been very well developed for mental health services for many, many years. We've been using here in Canada and other developed countries, because this is the only specialty I understand that you can do the full examination with the telemedicine, telemental health. I provide the telemental health all the time, day in, day out. there are so many electronic devices are available that a child can sit with the parents on the other side and clinician can sit in this side. You can take the history, you can do the mental stress examination, you can talk about the treatment recommendation. So in a in the remote area, the telemedicine could be, or telemental health could be very resourceful source. And I think that should be developed in a country like Bangladesh. Thank you very much indeed for all the panelists and all the presenters, sorry, the delegates, those who have been viewing our program. And I would like to thank you so much. I hope all goes well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Professor Shekhar Shadri, sir, would you please say something at the end? Sir, please unmute you, sir.
Sorry, I'll be very short. I wanted to take off a point from what Murad Bhai said and link it to something that Sifat said as the theme for next year's thing on service delivery. See, Murad Bhai spoke about how do we create this critical force, schools and so on, to actually serve the large child mental health needs, because the professional community cannot provide it. We are very small in number. And this is where task sharing and training of non-professional service providers become very important. And I think, therefore, that it is remarkable foresight of Bacamh to even think of service delivery as next year's theme for your conference, and I'd be happy to contribute to it, because this is exactly what we've been doing in Samvad. And some of these training materials for training materials for teachers, for child institution staff, for judiciary, for police, all this material is available on this site. And I would be, in fact, as it was pointed out, I would be happy to actually support Bacamh to be Bangladesh's Samvad and actually be the nodal point through which you do this kind of training. And it would be my honor and privilege to assist you in doing this. And we will discuss this at some other point of time. The second issue that I wanted to make is again taking off from something Murad Bhai mentioned, and many people spoke about the whole issue of increasing levels of substance abuse. And I just wanted to say that there is something known as the modified social stress model, which says that the risk of substance use is equal to, it's a mathematical formula, 3 factors on the numerator, 3 in the denominator. The risk is equal to DIS in brackets STRES. So distress or stress, you know what that means, plus normalization, the extent to which drug taking is part of the subculture. Everybody smokes here, what's the big deal? Cannabis is available freely, Canada has legalized. And what Murad called as the pot, reducing tension or giving a high, divided by coping strategies, life skills, plus support. What are your support systems? Intact family, social networks, plus resources. Resources are also divided into health resources, information resources, education resources, entertainment resources, and so on. Now, look at the significance of this paradigm. And the reason I'm stating this is that we need strong theories and concepts to actually carry out interventions. If in a shelter for street and working children, vulnerable children, you show a film once a week, it makes the difference between that boy who took 15 doses of his, the 15th was contaminated and he died, and this boy who was not abstinent, he took 14 doses, but he didn't take the 15th contaminated dose because he was in your shelter watching the film. My friends, this kind of larger psychosocial intervention plan makes the difference between life and death. And that's the point I wanted to make to you about what transdisciplinary means. The mental health fraternity's willingness to work with childcare institutions, to work with the police. So it is not just about treating trauma of child sexual abuse. It is what happens to that child in court. And that long, how do you prepare the child? It is not just about a child in conflict with the law, who has stolen or hit someone and injured him. It is what background does he come from? What are the pathways to vulnerability? So these are the kind of paradigms that I present to you as important issues for Bacamh to think about. Over to you, Niyaz Bhai.
Thank you, Professor Shekhar Seshadri sir and Professor Dr. Murad Bok sir. Now I request Professor Dr. Nahid Mazhabin Morshid, the President of Bacamh, to give the end of this session and say something.
Okay, thank you, Niyaz Muhammad Khan. I would like to show my gratitude to all the honorable panel of experts and the listeners, including my team, especially Dr. Hilaluddin Ahmed, Dr. Niyaz Muhammad Khan, Dr. Sifati Said. And of course, I'm very much grateful to our honorable speakers. They learned so many things. They guided us, and their informative, collaborative thinking and their presentation is very nice. And thank you so much, Shekhar Shekhadri, Professor Dr. Shekhar Shekhadri, for inviting us in your training program. We would like to, of course, we would like to attend your training programs with collaboration. Bacamh believes in collaboration in every field of mental health. We should, of course, we should go forward with everybody. And I invite all of you in our next 15th annual conference of Bacamh, which will be held on 14th and 15th November 2022 at Dhaka. And it's my pleasure to invite the speakers, our distinguished two speakers, and thank you so much, Professor Shekhar Shekhadri and the Murad Box, for your kind presence, information, and your very important speech to us and to show some path for us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And I would like to close this session officially. Thank you so much. Good night. May Allah stay us in a good health and good mind. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
আমরা কি একটু তাড়াতাড়ি শেষ করে ফেললাম নাকি 10:59 11টা বেজে গেছে স্যার শীতের রাত
যে অনেক রাত
হ্যাঁ অনেক রাত
না অনেক রাত আমি দেখলাম যে একটু ওনারা দুজন অনেক বলার পরে এই জন্য আমি বললাম একটু একটা কমেন্ট করুক